Good morning and welcome to another Antique Sunday, and I would like to this morning show you a piece which actually we had professionally photographed, and I'm very happy that we did. And I'd like to show you the third of the trilogy of bed hangings that my daughter brought back from Boston when she was on an internship. And as I've previously described with the other Boston bed hangings, the pieces that she bought really were in not great condition, but this one is in original condition and it is slightly different from the others. As you can see on this close-up, the threads are much finer than the other Boston bed hangings, and this piece has been worked by a different hand, and I think possibly professionally worked. It has not been conserved in any way, but it has been placed on a new backing, so you can see that the even weave backing is just peeping through in that corner. The passion flower shown here is there to represent the Passion of Christ. And you can see long and short stitch worked in layers just to give a 3D effect, just as the rest of the bed hangings. Again, you see the leaves worked from a pale colour, a sort of usually a yellowy green, through a brighter green into the deeper greens. And that's a very typical order of wools in crewel work. And as you can see on this leaf, the leaf behind is worked in a slightly greener sets of colours, and then that's worked first. In fact, the stem is worked first, and then the darker leaves, and then this folded yellowy brown assortment of colours, just mirroring the stem just below to the left and underneath. So it's a very clever device when you're actually designing to bring those colours through from the stems into the leaves and the main features. The colour palette's quite limited actually on this piece, and the pinks and the reds look to me to be cochineal dyed, and this piece I would date to about 1680. So the wools at this time look to be similar to breeds such as the Leicester sheep, but of course the documentation of the sheep breeds and the production of wool was incredibly important, and really the embroiderer stitched and used wools and of course the ground linen and needles that they had at the time, and the stitches were adapted to actually cope with the varieties of wool breeds and sheep breeds. You can see that in the centre of this flower someone has added a little bit of extra detail. That's quite often happens in crewel work. You get a little few additions, and somebody thinks, the middle of that flower's missing its French knots. I think I'll just put some Laden couch work in there. Well, I think I'll just add a little bit more detail around the edges because I'm rebacking it anyway. The acanthus and the stylised oak leaves, the carnation and the native flowers, they would all, and the rose of course, they'd all be familiar to the designer of this piece. This is a very good photograph to show you the layers of crewel outlines or crewel stem stitch going along that very thick stem, and just the colours blending from one colour range to the next. So you're starting with a greeny yellow, so that's actually in Appleton's about 331, going through to possibly 762, and then going into the 90s in the creams, and then the browns, and then the deeper browns. That's another range again, and is that 982? It's rather sad that I know all these numbers backwards, but you know, look at the old pieces and look how they place colour. Look how clever that placement of the yellows through the greens into the dark blues in those lines looks, and that is beautifully what you see on the right hand side of that leaf. You've got long, short, soft shading, and on the left hand side you've got stacked layers of crewel stem stitch worked again and again, just in a very pleasing rhythm, and just that's rather reassuring, that repetitive use of the same colours over and over again, and that's 4 times down the upper area of that leaf. And then you see it echoed again over here. And on this leaf, you can see that the dark colour is used from the outside, dark, if you look the far left of that leaf, it's navy blue through to and those are the 1/5s, I would say. In the middle, that looks like 155, and then in towards the centre of the vein, and then finishing again with that yellowy 331 or 692 possibly. But then on the right-hand side of the same leaf, you can see that the outer side of that leaf starts with the palest colour and works its way inwards towards the left-hand navy. So if you're with me still, just know that, you know, just by swapping, very simply reversing the colour order on a leaf can just show movement and an interest. And I have talked to you before about these pieces. They may look very static and solid, but if you're designing something that's natural or appears to be natural, it really should look as though it's blowing in the wind and you've taken a very quick picture of it, and then that little snapshot shows it still. And my son Rufus told me that many years ago, and I always think of that, and I'm sure that you will work out your own design rules, but being influenced by the past and being informed by what they did, you're benefiting from hundreds and thousands of years of knowledge about textiles that we can't possibly learn in one lifetime. Now this little video is going on far too long, but I really had to come back and show you the naturally worked rose, worked in a naturalistic style. And of course those aren't rose leaves next to it, but you know, they didn't really care. And that's, to the left is a stylized oak leaf, and you know, to the right, below it is that of fern. That's not a rose leaf that I would recognise on my roses, but this little flower down here looks like a peony, and showing the Chinese influence, the Oriental influence, and to the right of it, those are not peony leaves. My peony leaves look more like this leaf. So I'm going to go home soon and look at my leaves and just check them out, but don't be stuck with the same leaves all the time. And this little explosion over here, that looks almost like a pineapple in its influence. It's wonderful to see that little face. It's almost, if I rotate the picture slightly, you'll see it looks like a little pansy, but mutated into a rose. And those little leaves to the left and the right, just welcoming you like arms. And they've used the device I described just before about the pale colour on the top of that leaf, on one side of the leaf on the edge and the dark on the other. But on the left hand side, no, they're not going to do that. They're just going to use the dark all the way, nearly all the way through that leaf, with a slightly medium tone in the middle, and then the pale vein down the centre. So, you know, you get a good idea. Don't just keep hammering at it. Just have some refreshing moments, and just swap your colours around as much as you can. But keeping in the same colour palette is also very restful. And I've just got to come back to one last picture of the main piece and let you enjoy the produce. I'm just returning to the large hanging to show you that this designer put in the main structures first, the big stems and trunks of the tree, and it's contorted in a very oriental way, if you look at that, and then you look at paintings on China that would have been their influence. And of course, almost forgot the little bird on this one, which is the same bird as the other Boston bed hangings that you saw on an earlier video. And I'm wondering if this was used, you know, this was copied on the older ones, on the younger ones, sorry. This is the older piece here, so late 17th century, and the other pieces, I'm not sure what date they are, but I'm sure that this design was copied on the other two.